Big picture question first.
Okay.
You say, in this book, you say you're not introspective. And yet, this book is incredibly introspective. It's candid, it's heartfelt, it's juicy in parts. Did you have to force yourself to look inside?
I guess I did, but it seemed all to come oddly naturally. Meaning, in other words, once I started, first of all, I thought I wouldn't be able to remember anything because, God, it's 2,000 years ago. It's 50 years ago or 60 years ago that I'm trying to remember things, or even go even further to when I was a little kid. And I thought, I don't remember anything. If you ask yourself, what do you remember? Nothing, it's kind of blank. But actually, when you start to pull the stitches, things come back that just shock you, that you thought, this will never, ever be, where'd this come from? I've never really thought about being introspective as such. In other words, I don't sit around and go, all right, what's the meaning of this? Or and people ask me, what's the text? And I say, leave me alone, I don't do text. It's the surface. But when you're talking about, I wanted to tell the truth. And so, since that was my motive, so to speak, meaning I thought, I know it's a good story in just pure narrative terms. I have experience with stories, so I know this is a good story, good tale. So can I tell it? But more than even saying, can I tell it, was, can I tell it true? And that was the thing that, if anything was my guardrail, guidepost, it was that. And so when you're doing that, when you're saying, okay, what's true, it kind of, maybe naturally, I don't know what the alchemy of it is, but it does get you to deal with stuff you never thought you'd dealt with before or explained before to yourself.
Yeah, it's like you're figuring yourself out as you're telling the stories.
As you're typing away.
You said in the preface, when I was young, I was far too afraid.
Yes.
I'm no longer that, and I'm too old to care.
Yes.
Afraid of what?
Well, you mean when I was growing up?
Yeah.
What was I afraid of? Or not growing up, or in the earlier parts of my life? I was afraid of secrets being revealed. I was afraid of that I thought I didn't qualify. And so almost anything could set me off of being just afraid of revealing myself.
You talk about this, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you say that through your life, your sexuality was like this anvil on a wire hanging over your head.
Yes, because I was afraid. Listen, this is in the 60s and 70s. And I thought, I think probably I was being realistic, that, first of all, my sexuality was confused. And I thought, well, if I reveal it, what am I actually going to reveal? And I didn't think I was a poster boy for anything. And so I thought it was dangerous. And so I kind of, silly way to phrase anything. I organized my life so that I felt protected, and that I didn't want to risk what a lot of other people risked, even at that time. Talking about homosexuality, talking about whatever sexuality is, was something that scared the hell out of me.
Well, you know what? Let's go back first and talk about your growing up, because I think that plays into this, and then we'll get back to your choice to keep your personal life personal. But growing up, what was your relationship with your parents like?
Well, my relationship with my parents, who were very nice people, but they had no clue about children. It was not. It was like from their grandparents to their parents to me, was a steady line of dysfunction. They were clueless. And they were living their lives. It wasn't that they were selfish. It was really I really did think I was raised in a kind of very plush forest.
A plush forest? Is that what
Forest.
you said? They never asked you about your personal
My
life? They never
parents-
asked you personal questions?
My parents, I know how shockingly crazy, well, this is crazy, I guess, but so dysfunctional it is. But my parents never asked me anything. They did not ask me, essentially, now talking little kid stuff in school. My friends' parents, they had report cards and they pored over them or chastised their children for this or discipline or whatever. It was benign. It wasn't destructive in the sense of being harsh or whatever. It's just they did not, it's not that they were vacant, but the relationship was relatively formal in that we did not discuss things. All my stuff was being around my friends and their families, which were all very lively discussions and very intense involvement. And my friends had chores and they had responsibilities. I had no chores and I had no responsibilities. And again, it wasn't a by any means a harsh atmosphere, but it was vacant in terms of that. And so, no, my parents never asked me any questions, ever in my life, actually.
Nothing like, what do you
Like,
think
where are you
about
going to go to
that? What do you-
school, or where do you want to do this, or what do you want to do that? Perfectly pleasant, but perfectly dysfunctional.
Not very deep.
There was no actual depth there. But there was nothing evil or harsh and the environment I grew up in, because I grew up in this Beverly Hills community, just a little small town, basically. This is what it is. I don't know, Beverly Hills was like 20,000 people. I think it's still about that. I don't think it's great. It can't grow in size because there are borders. And so it was a kind of isolated environment in the sense that you didn't really go outside the borders of this little town up until you were, let's say, beyond riding your bicycle or going with your parents or whatever, or friends, parents, stuff like that in cars. So that was isolating. And then my house that I grew up in was isolating. So that was the brew.
Wow. And meanwhile, you said from age 8, you knew, but you didn't know.
Yeah, I think I don't really know enough here. I'm not a great, so to speak, student of this, but I think that's true for a lot of people. Now, at a certain point, you do know, but for sure, I did and I didn't. And that went on for years.
Where it's, maybe I'm attracted to
Yes,
boys.
who
I
knows?
can't figure it out
You can't,
yet.
and I didn't want to figure it out. Basically, I think the healthy part of me said, let it go, you know? Don't crimp it, or don't really question it. The thing of know and didn't know is really just actually just nerve endings, day nerve endings. It wasn't a depth of inquiry. And I decided, a healthy part of me decided, just don't do anything. It'll tell you.
And at age 16, you had your first sexual encounter. Did you tell your friends? Did you tell anybody about
Of
it?
course not. I didn't tell myself. I mean, I thought, oh, what did I think? I thought, oh, I did that. I don't have to do it again. I really actually, I know consciously and remember absolutely thinking, oh, okay, I did that. Done. It was
Really?
okay.
I did this thing with a guy, but
I did
that's
this
the
thing
end
and a
of
guy,
it.
yeah, I don't need to do that again. And then a month later, I did.
Did it again.
And then I knew.
But you didn't think at any point then, I'm going to tell anybody.
Oh, no.
No.
No. These are, again, at this time, these are real. It was necessary. It's necessary to be a big secret.
It was necessary
Yeah, it was necessary.
for your...
I thought for survival. Yeah. Again, a different period. I don't know what would happen today. I have no clue, of course. I only have my own experience. But at that time, I really did think that this, first of all, what I read about homosexuality was that it was a mental disease.
You looked it up in the
I
library, and
ran
that's what
the
you
healthy
found.
part of me at 11 or 12 years old or 13. I got on my bike and I rode down to the Beverly Hills Public Library and I looked for books on homosexuality, and everything I read was like horrible. And I got on my bike and I rode home and thought, I'm a condemned person. I mean, for a little kid, that's not great.
No. So there's this whole side of you that feels like, I mean, you said, like, I don't deserve things, I'm condemned. And yet there's another side of you that is finding its way.
Well, I'm lucky because I had healthy biology, I guess. So I found a way to navigate.
So let's talk about how you started to navigate in the business world. You land at William Morris in the mailroom.
I'm sure of that navigation than the other.
Well, which makes sense that
I
you're
hope
still
so.
struggling with your personal life and what's going on there. And we should talk about this because you became fearless in business. And do you think that
Well,
was...
I think if you have a very big fear about something, it doesn't leave much room for other fears. So in a way, and I do think this, I think all the things that affected me, and this is really, in a way, like I don't know about overstatement or not, many of the things that affected me as a child, many of the things that were dysfunctional or that were that were difficulties, so to speak, or things that I had to navigate around, or things that I had to adapt myself to. Those things really were tools that in business and in pro-life were advantages. I learned to please people. I learned that since I couldn't assert self, I could, though, please people enough that that pleasing of them would give me advantages. I could sublimate myself in situations that other people who did not have these anvils or whatever hanging over whatever by thin or thick wire would be able to they would be able to assert themselves, where I had to find a circuitous route. But at the earliest stages of a career, that's an enormous advantage. So I wouldn't say I used what I had. What I would say is that a lot of the dysfunctions and all the stuff of growing up gave me certain advantages, particularly early in my career, to actually succeed.
William Morris. All these other young kids want to be agents, and so they're going in that direction.
And I'm saying, no chance, I can't be an agent because I don't have any self to, I can't represent other people because I can't assert myself in that way. But by the way, also, I really wasn't interested in doing that. I was interested in the entertainment business. I wasn't interested in hustling myself to represent others to further, quote, a career. I was interested actually in since I never did any homework when I was in school, like formal school. But when I got to William Morris and I was able to read their library, I thought, my God, I just want to devour every inch of this. It was pulling me, I wasn't pulling it.
And you
And that
spent,
was-
what, 3 years reading the files at William Morris?
I read the file room, A to Z, every inch of it. What It's like, even if you could conceive of what would be a better preparation for understanding a business you were fascinated with than literally reading the careers of everybody in the entertainment business from the beginning of their careers through sometimes the end of their careers. What a frigging advantage.
So at the same time, you're getting known for your business sense and all of these great achievements, and you made a decision. I'm going to keep my personal life personal, private. I'm not going to talk about it.
What I did was I said, I gotta have rules. I gotta have rules that I can live with and that seem appropriate. I wouldn't use the word honorable. That's too high a claim. They just were things that I felt I could only navigate if I had these kind of rules of my road, which was I would not pose. I would not try and be something that I wasn't. I would not ask or tell. I would never do anything to, well, I said it earlier about posing, which was probably the most important thing, which is if you are in the situation that I was in at that time, which was I had this secret, I didn't want to talk about my sexuality, but I also didn't want to make anyone think I was something that I wasn't. And that was incredibly important to me. That was like a core, it was a core code, so to speak. So I just made these rules literally, I think I did this when I was 19 or 20 or 21. And I thought, well, I didn't think anything. I thought, these are my rules, and it'll be what it'll be.
That must have been difficult.
No, it
No?
was no. It was actually wonderful because it gave me a way to function where I said, I will do this and I won't do that.
You had a
And
clear path.
I had a clear understanding of how far I would go with my personal life and my emerging business life. And I thought that I needed to know, I needed to decide what I would and I wouldn't do. And it was liberating for me to do that.
You write in the book that looking back on it, you think perhaps it was wrong. Let me phrase this another way. I think you said, I felt at the time I didn't owe the world an explanation of my personal life.
No, I wouldn't say that I didn't think I owed. I mean, it wasn't think of an obligation. I thought in order for me to function, I thought I saw too many examples of people actually posing their way through their lives. And I did not want to do that. I thought if I have to do that, I just thought, I don't want to do that. And so my alternative was to say, well, I won't. I won't do that. And whatever those consequences are, I'll take those consequences. And deciding on those rules, so to speak, gave me a kind of protection.
Were there consequences?
Yeah, probably there were. Although, it's in a way, this title of this book, which is not just a question of who knew, it's also who knew. And as I'm in my 20s and 30s, I presumed everybody knew about my life. It's just I wasn't a participant in their knowing. And it was okay with me, even though I thought, well, I don't want to talk about it, even though I knew that, quote, they knew. I made this scramble in my brain to keep it separate. It allowed me to survive.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think would have happened otherwise?
Well, the thing is it's not what would have happened. It's the fear of what would have happened. And, there's certainly, at that time, there's certainly evidence of it, during the 60s and 70s, these formative periods of my life, after high school, let's say, there were really quite harsh consequences. Though it is probably mostly in your mind.
I get that, though. Whether it's in your mind or not, the monster is still there. The anvil
The
over the
anvil,
head.
the anvil, yes, I know it's a little theatrical, but then I am theatrical. But I did absolutely, my little bubble above my head was, there's an anvil, and it's there, and it can come crashing down on you at any time. That, listen, that is for an adolescent, for almost anybody and anything, to have that in your mind, and I share that with an awful lot of people then, and certainly now, that is still there for adolescents as their sexuality is emerging, and they want to be one of the tribe and act like the tribe, even though they know they're not of that tribe. The pressure, even today, is really is almost oppressive during a time of adolescence when everything is kind of flowing out of you, and your exuberance, ups and downs, are so wondrous in a way. Great fun and great all sorts of tumult around it. But if you're in this situation where your sexuality is either confusing or is alternative, then your adolescence is almost completely robbed, pulled away from you. That's quite a cruelty to a child.
Yeah, that's true. And you're right, it still is an
Yes,
issue.
of course it is. It always will be.
In those early years at Paramount, while you're getting your footing there, you met
Well, here we
Diane
go.
Von Furstenberg. Here we go. And it's interesting because you didn't click with her at first, but then
No.
when the two of you clicked, you clicked.
Yeah, it was a French phrase, coup de foudre, meaning, just, it was inexplicable to both of us, I think. And, there's this scene from West Side Story when they're at the dance, and they're all dancing, and then slowly the camera and the lights shine on Tony and Maria, and they look at each other, and whatever happens, whatever that weird chemistry or whatever it is, divine something, it's going overboard, but then I am theatrical. But yeah, it was, the first time I met her, I never wanted to see her again because she was dismissive of me and whatever. But then the second time that we met, which was a few months later, within minutes, and it was pure. It was just such pure desire.
And it was a steamy romance.
Yes. Oh yes, it was those things. Yes.
You talk about how for years you've read that you and Diane are best friends. And that's not entirely accurate.
No, of course not. Listen, people who think they know about my history, people that they think this or that they think that, or with Diane's history, they think what they think. But of course are we friends? I mean, yes. I mean, anybody who's in any relationship with anyone, there are aspects of friendship and companionship and whatever. But to describe us as friends is just, it's insulting because of what it presumes. And yet, okay, we know.
And you make it clear, I mean, I'll just put it out there, your relationship with Diane is not just platonic.
No. No, it didn't start that. No.
No, you're lovers.
Yes.
You call your relationship with her the bedrock of your life. What
For
does she
sure.
mean to you?
Well, I don't know any better description than bedrock. I mean, I don't know where I can go with that. She is my family. She is, it's so bromidic and whatever, but we are together in the most wonderful ways. And when we are just together, we have very full lives, each of us. And we also have our own family, and we have friends, and we have all of that. But the best times for us are when it's just us. And after almost 50 years, how lucky do you get?
You touch on this in the book, this feeling that maybe I should have come out earlier.
I don't know, I don't, that phrase, but
Yeah, we don't have to use that phrase, but you do touch on these feelings of maybe I was wrong.
no, I don't know that I was wrong about not talking about my private life. I think I was a coward, and I don't like that, but that is the truth. I was. I did not have, and I wish I did, I did not have the courage at that time to make declarations. Also, I was confused about the declarations, and I thought, well, I'm really being truthful. I'm not a poster boy, because for many reasons. And so I thought, well, no, I thought I would have liked to have had the courage to, at that time, because in truth, who knows what would have happened? And would it have freed me, as it has for so many people who've been able to do that with increasing ease as the decades have gone on? Yes, probably yes. But at that time, I didn't, and I regret it. Even though, yes, in certain aspects, I could be a, quote, role model, and that might have been beneficial, well, I didn't have the guts to do it.
Does that weigh on you?
Not enormously, but yes, if I, well, I wouldn't call it weighing on me, but it is something that, of course, I've thought. But it didn't turn out so terribly.